listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 249, The Bodast Tapes. And coming to you from the suburbs of Chicago, where the most popular band is a band of coyotes, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John, 3-day cleanse, Matola.
Oh no, are you doing a 3-day cleanse?
Oh yeah, it's time, baby. The holidays are long over, and all that bloat's got to go with it.
So what does it entail?
So it's these I don't know if you've ever heard of them before. It's what is it, like 4 capsules a day, like a natural formula.
Okay.
So you take 2 in the morning and 2 at night, and it's supposed to help promote waste and toxin elimination.
Oh, hello. Are you going to need some bathroom breaks during the show?
No, I should be fed. It's not like I keep telling it to people, like, oh, so you
Yeah.
do you like walk around and like, crap your pants uncontrollably? And it's like, no, I'm an adult. I know how to hold it. No, it's just, it helps, it's like a little thing I usually do, like these like natural capsules from which I promote them by Renew Life. So you can
we have a sponsorship this week.
yes, Renew Life for the new
Did
year.
JLT do a jingle for them?
Yeah, but every like 3 to 6 months, I take them, I feel like it's, they have like pills for like liver detox and total body detox and stuff. And it's, I don't know if they work, but they make me feel better. So
All right, well,
I give them the personal Matola thumbs up.
I like the idea that it just make you crap your pants. Like, I feel so much better now that I've been crapping my pants for 3 days.
Boy, I'm not bloated, but I need to go shopping for new clothes.
Oh my goodness. So the other night I was walking my dog, and there's been some coyote activity. And I was walking my dog through the park, and I wear this, my brother-in-law and father-in-law give me a hard time because I wear this hat with like a little spotlight on it. Because
they should give you a hard time.
They're like,
no, actually, that's smart.
I was like, oh, my sissy, because I have a light on my hat so that I don't trip and I can see my dog and all that sort of stuff.
And they were like,
I
yes.
don't give a shit. So I'm wearing this light, and all of a sudden I see these 2 little lights shining back at me over here, and then I see 2 little lights over here shining back at me, and I'm like, oh, that's 2 coyotes like hunting us. So I was like, oh shit.
Oh.
So I immediately kind of veered off, and then but I'm like kind of walking backwards with the dog, who's completely oblivious to any of this even happening, and they're following us, and then they start to kind of split up, like they're going on either side of us. So my wife for Christmas had gotten me a little coyote whistle. It's like, oh, they hate the noise. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm like on my little whistle. Nothing. They're like, whatever, we don't care. We're still gonna just follow you. So they followed me for a while until I got to the street, and then I like basically walked in the middle of the street where it's really lit, because by that part of the park it's pitch black. If I didn't have that hat, I would never have seen them, and I don't know what would have happened. Like, I don't know if they would have attacked, but I don't know if they were sizing us up. But eventually, they followed us for a while, and then they just kind of broke off and went somewhere else. So, and then immediately before I was getting on to record, I was walking the dog, broad daylight, because we're doing a morning recording, and we turned to go to the park, and there's a coyote just chilling right there, and the dog was like, she was like, oh, another dog, I want to go play. So she's like pulling, and I'm like, no, and so I pull her away, and then I was with my son, and we just kind of made a dash back home. And then so I always text the whole neighborhood and everything to just let them know, hey, there's coyotes out, because some of them have these tiny little dogs that the coyote would just like probably eat in one bite. So I texted my mother-in-law, because she has a littler dog too, and she says, stay away. They always hunt in packs. Coyotes usually hunt at night. They must be very, very in daylight. So I said, "Oh, really? I was letting the dog play with the coyotes. So thank you for the tip." And she says, "Coyotes can run faster than you." I said, "Another hot tip from you about coyotes. Like, I'm just learning so much here."
I
I'm
like
like,
to
this
stay away. That was my favorite tip.
stay away. I was like, "Oh, that is. Let me write this down. I hope I can remember this in the future when I encounter a coyote." I was
Oh,
gonna just go charge at them. Um,
oh.
but she as soon as I told her the other night about the coyote, um, she went and she got and I'll have to put this in the show notes. She went and she's a bit of a uh warrior, so she went and got this suit for her dog. Can you see it?
Well, yeah, it looks like friggin' it looks like Gene Simmons codpiece from the late 70s or something. All spikes
It's
coming on it.
it's like Mad Max.
Oh, that's
Like it's this
great.
it's bright orange suit just completely covered in like Billy Idol bracelets. So
So I mean, well,
taking no
first of
chances.
all, I mean, was the uh you already had a coyote whistle, so I mean, is this something that's been an anticipated issue over there? Like,
Well, I think when I spotted them when they hunted me through the park, that was when they're like, okay, we got to take some precautions, and that's when I got the whistle. But since the whistle doesn't do dick, I am
hmm.
going to I think invest in some coyote mace or something in case it
Yeah, it
comes to
might be
that.
good. So now this is like on the this is you're not like walking through the woods or anything. You're walking through your neighborhood,
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
populated area, like
there's like a creek that runs through there, and it's kind of wooded, but then there's a park, but it's surrounded on all sides by houses. So,
yeah, all
um,
right.
a,
So
another neighbor is walking their dog with a bat. Um,
hey, I don't
and my
blame them.
mother-in-law is like, "Oh, if a coyote gets that close to you, you shouldn't be letting it get that close to you." I was like, "Yeah, but if it does, I'd rather have a bat than not have a bat." You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah. Well,
I'm
I don't get that either. It's like you shouldn't letting it because like, hey, come on over here. Let's have a
yeah,
simple
it's like
conversation.
I'm not in. Yeah, hey, let's just talk this out, man to man,
Man to coyote.
man to coyote.
Oh, that reminds me of like when me, Pops, and Mike went on when we were doing our hiking trip in the White Mountains a couple of years ago, and there was like for some reason it was before we started going up with the whole family, and there was one year where they were particularly curious or like paranoid about bears, and they were just like,
Mhm.
John, like Google what to do in case a bear comes, and I'm like, fucking like stay away from it. Like, I don't think there are too many tips that I wouldn't know. I mean, obviously, you try and like back away from it or like
Well, I know
not,
there's some bears that you're supposed to make yourself look really big, and then
yeah.
some that you're supposed to play dead. I can't remember. It's like brown, but the difference between a brown bear and a black bear. But I don't encounter bears enough to really commit that to
Yeah, so
memory.
all kidding aside, I guess there are like you said, the different tips and stuff like that. But I mean, just like with any wild animal, you never want to make any sudden moves or like act like you're afraid,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
because they sense that obviously, and I can't imagine how difficult that would be if you're just like you're just like standing there next to a bear and you're like,
Yeah, yeah. You're just like, "Psst, no big deal. I'm not
you're like,
scared."
it's a bear. Hey, you want to go look at? Do you want to go look at the views?
Can, can they sense that you're bullshitting though? Like, because if you're like, no big deal, can't they sense that like, no, this guy's still scared? Be rest assured that almost any human that is sane is going to be scared in your presence. Anyone that's not
Yeah,
is one of those like guys that gets eaten by a bear.
I think they
Um,
figured that out. Yeah.
all right, so folks, hey, we are thrilled to be with you here today this week. If you want to support our show is 100% listener supported and ad free. So if you want to support us, help keep us in good things and help keep the show running, you can do so a number of ways. One is by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Gets read on the show and helps new people discover the show. You can buy some merch at our Etsy store. You can become a patron on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can also donate on PayPal for the same. You can donate on Cash App at $DPPOD or support us on Ko-fi. Um, and speaking of people that support us,
New patron.
we have a new patron with us this week. This patron is named Derple Purple, coming in at the $1 silly made up name tier.
I like that.
And Derpel, I don't know if Derpel wants us to use his real name, but he's been following us for a long time, and he's very, very young. And I remember a couple years ago, he's like, as soon as I'm old enough to get a credit card or whatever, I'm going to support the show. I've been a loyal, faithful listener, and sure enough, lived up to his promise right after the first of the year. Derpel writes in and says, "Hey guys, honestly, it's been such a fun ride following the show for the last few years that I couldn't help but want to support it. Proud to be one of the younger listeners of the show, and I hope that it gets more and more recognition from here on out. Best regards." So thank you, Derpel. Really appreciate that. And I know just from Derpel's real name that they have said that they were going to donate for a while, and they've left us Apple review. So really appreciate their support. And speaking of people that support the show, thanks to our executive level patrons at the in memoriam tier, the wonderful late Gerald, Jerry, Kelly, and family. At the $25 uncommon man tier, we have Ovis Nakfi and Purple Maniac. At the 15 squid tier, we have Alan. At the $10 good doctor tier, we have none other than Dr. Mike Catan.
Somebody get me some doctors.
At the turn it up to $11 tier, Clay Wambacher, Frank Tealgarn Mortensen, Mikkel Steen, and Will Porter, PhDPP. At the $10 Someone Came tier, Ryan M., Jeff Bryce, Victor Campos, Better Call Saul Evans, and Peter from Illinois. And at the Hughes Oween by 2033 tier, we have Fielding Fowler. Ever-evolving tier.
Haven't heard that in a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, we've taken quite a break. Although there will be no break for our listeners. We're back after our holiday break. And coming up soon, as of the recording of this, we have Glenn Hughes live at the Yakarta in St. Charles, Illinois, the pickle capital of the world, playing with Enough's Enough and Bad Marriage. On February 10th, John's birthday. John will not be in attendance, but I will.
Wah,
And
wah.
2 of the 3 available tickets have been snatched up. One by none other than Dr. Mike Catan.
Awesome.
And the other by, maybe obvious from his name, Peter from Illinois. Although I don't think Peter lives super close. He's in Illinois, but Illinois is big, so.
So they're both going with you.
They're both going to be going with me, and
That's great.
I don't
Awesome.
know as of listening to this if there'll be any more tickets available, but as of now, there's one more ticket available. So I should probably just reach out to Ryan M in advance and give him the heads up because I know he's local.
True.
And yeah, and if not, then there might still be one available. So contact me. And you know what? If it's not, I'm sure there's other tickets available. So get some tickets. But in our little cluster of 4 seats, that's if you want to purchase one of the tickets, just get in touch with me. Then we also have the Satriani tour, which I haven't reached out to anybody about yet, but I have 4 tickets for that. In Chicago, that's going to be in Chicago proper at the Chicago Theater. So I'm thinking it's an older theater because it's called the Chicago Theater. If that name wasn't taken yet, it's a perfect place for the Deep Purple podcast to hang out.
Well, I will say that just as Coverdale would say, to slide it in,
right.
that I will be going to see Glenn Hughes in Derry, New Hampshire, February 16th, 6 days after my birthday and after Nate sees him, at the Tupelo Music Hall with Yang Shaylor and friends.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I was like, Yang playing with him again?
No, with all the same people. No, Rich and I are going. I believe the Gardeau and the Roback are also going,
Nice.
and some other friends of our Riches, I believe, that are not friends or patrons of the podcast, but I believe I met them before. So that's all I know. Yes, yet. Yeah, so I think that there's going to be some people up there. So if anybody's in that area, I will be going to that show. And then the Satriani, I would love to. When was that? Did you say April?
April. I just said it. April 18th.
Yes. I don't know, or I don't think that at least they didn't announce any dates around here yet. So I might actually want to go out for that one.
Yeah. It's right next to my daughter's birthday, so I'm going to figure out logistically what, I mean, obviously I can go out for that show, but that weekend will probably be, so yeah, maybe I'll just take a few days a few extra days off. Like maybe I'll take Wednesday through Sunday off because her birthday's on the Sunday. So yeah.
See, like me, just like staying at your house, like awkwardly, like crashing a children's party. Just come out in my pajamas, bottle of wine. Sup?
What's up, kids? Pin the tail on Matola.
Yeah, I'm Drunko the clown. How you doing? It's like, who's that? Oh, it's a house guest, childhood friend of Nate's. He's having hard times. Just
Yeah.
sweep him into the guest room there. Get out of here.
He's been going through some tough stuff. So before we move on, there's one little segment that we need to do, and that is, of course, our recurring segment, Postcards from the Edge of Connecticut. And I got a few that have collected over the last few weeks. This one right here is a postcard of a Christmas time Ethel Merman.
Oh, well, what do you know? I look, I got the same one.
There you go. Look at Ethel, young Ethel. Look at those gams. And it says, Christmas carols always brought tears to my eyes. I also cry at weddings. I should have cried at a couple of my own. Ethel Merman. Merry Christmas from the Merms and the Roback.
Yep, I got the same inscription. So
That is
very
great.
nice.
Then we've got what's this?
What is?
You might have gotten this one too. It says,
Is that the butt off Williams house?
no, it says, hey
No,
Nate.
it's got
Now,
too many trees.
yeah, exactly. Now, hey Nate. Now here's a historic home for you. Had a great time visiting the Gardeau home and museum. What a gift shop, the Roback. And it's it says the Peter Gardeau house. And it says this 1910 colonial wood frame includes extensive collections of postcards, label makers, and Frank Zappa albums. Can't really. Yeah, it's got a few more trees than the Butt Off Williams house. That's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that like maybe butt off Williams before they cut the trees down, or I don't know.
Yeah, Butt Off Williams needs some shrubbery or something. Then I got this one, which I don't know if it's supposed to be. Oh, here we go. So this one right here, little map of Germany, and it's hard to see, but he circled here. He wrote here. And this one, it says Reproduction der Wunderkart im Brotformat. I'm sure that was spot on. Ralph Kaff can email me to congratulate me on that perfect pronunciation. It says Nate and John. Now here's a Ludwigshafen on the map for you, Peter. So that's Ludwigshafen, where Whitesnake played. Yep, so it's got the whole. I can't tell if this is. Yeah, this looks like it's probably just like West Germany. Probably an older postcard. But yeah, nice happy holidays. Some strange happy holidays cards from our listeners. And then that's not all. Also got this care package in, speaking of Ethel Merman, which is
yes,
4 packages of Vel
I also got four bottles of Bell through the mail.
from Montreal. It came from Montreal.
I was
So
like,
they must not make it here anymore, but it's like it's got the French language on it. Oh,
yeah,
no,
I
wait.
don't really care for the scent, so
No, you don't like the rose scent?
a little too perfumed for me, but
Yeah, it's a little rosy. It's a little rosy, but I'll tell you, it cuts through that grease like gangbusters. I've been using it.
and don't also, I know it's not a postcard, but let's not forget our Ethel Merman mugs.
Yes. I don't have mine with me. It's
My
upstairs,
collection
but
is
I
always
did drink
around
my
my
tea out of
desk
it this
here.
morning. So
Yeah, so anybody that doesn't know, then Nate, put in the show notes what episode we were on of the 70s weekly podcast where Ethel Merman was the main topic of discussion.
yes, and
Now
that
we have
would
all
make
these-
the Vel. I didn't get a gift card to Texaco though. Do they even have Texacos?
I was gonna say, do they even, because I just know there's like Shell, Mobile,
Texaco.
I don't even know if that's gotta be.
You would think maybe it might be like regional. It might still be like in the West Coast or something, but I can't remember ever seeing a Texaco, and I can't remember the last time I saw one.
Let me
So
see. Texaco, see locations. Oh,
you like this one right down the street.
oh, okay. Well, there were two. There was one in Pawtucket, which is marked as temporarily closed, and there was one right here in the suburbs of Providence, Lincoln, permanently closed.
Hmm. I'm showing one in Calumet in Indiana. It's open. Road
All
trip.
right.
When you if you come up for by, we'll drive an hour to Calumet to go get some gas.
Well, the the funny thing is that I mapped this, and it's funny because the one, I wonder where this is. Okay,
Wow.
so in relation to where I am, it's actually not too far away, but it's just like if you map it and it shows the location, it basically shows like where it used to be, and it's like a friggin' whole ass house and driveway, and it's not like an
Yeah.
abandoned lot. It's like actually looks like a house that's been there for like, 15 years.
Yeah, if I there's one like way up in Wisconsin, way up in Michigan, and then there's one in Kentucky. So they're pretty, and a couple in Iowa. But yeah, it looks like they're definitely a dying breed. Quite a few in Tennessee and Georgia. But
Yeah,
all
no,
right,
there's yeah, yeah. So anybody in the northeast, New England area, probably going to be shit out of luck if you're in the Providence area. No Texacos here.
shit out of luck. Yeah, like the other gas stations, gas isn't doesn't work good, just the same.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're looking for a Texaco,
It'd be
I
great if they
looked,
came out in those suits from like the 50s and they clean your windshield and stuff. It was like the old school
all dressed up in
Texaco.
like white suits and everything.
Yep.
They're just like
The best thing to be
moonlighting
working
is
with
like a
gasoline and oil.
like a roller skating waiter down the street or whatever. They always dress up in like those white uniforms and they come out and give you car service.
Oh, it looks like they were acquired by Chevron, so that's probably why.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
headquarters in White Plains, New York. That was right near where I used to live.
well,
Interesting.
either way, I mean, where I get my gas is the lowest price gas
Where I get my
station.
gas is just on the way to work. Like I don't give a shit.
No, I know where the lowest price is, and I go to it.
You're like my dad. You'll drive 3 miles out of your way to save a nickel a gallon.
Yes, I will. Friggin' gas station, like right down the street from me. It's like the most expensive gas like ever, and I'm like, I refuse to go to it.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap around here lately. It's almost every place is under $3, so I'll take it.
Oh yeah,
But hey, we're not here to talk about gas.
no.
And although if this is your first time listening, it might surprise you. We're here to talk about Bodast, but before we do that, check out Deep Dive Podcast Network for like-minded shows on mostly on single bands, and other things. We're kind of expanding, so a lot of great shows out there. Check it out, deepdivepodcastnetwork.com for a feed of all of our network shows. All right, Bodast, John, Bodast. What do you know or remember about Bodast?
I don't know. Is that one of the names that Pops called you when he forgot? He's like, "Hey, it's Nate Bodast."
It's possible. He could very well have called me Bodast.
I know only what you told me the other day when you said we're doing Bodast for the next episode. So
Well, I remember Bodast coming up in those early days of searching the internet, probably Highway Star, and
yeah,
looking at the family tree. And there was always this thing early on, this little shoot that said Bodast. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And it was one of those things that we kind of joke about, like, Quatermass, Bodast, Captain Beyond, all these things we had no exposure
yeah.
to and only just heard the name. Um, so it's very intertwined with Deep Purple. So in the early days of Roundabout, Chris Curtis from the Searchers teamed up with Tony Edwards and John Coletta and Ron Hyre to start the group Roundabout. The idea was that Chris Curtis would be like the singer, and all the stuff would kind of like revolve around him. Musicians would jump on and off whenever they wanted. That was kind of the early formation. So there's a great interview with a great interview with Nick Simper by Simon Robinson, and he has some kind of few little quotes about these early days. He says, back with the Flower Pot Men, me and Carlo Little We're saying to Lord that we should do something. Let's get Ritchie over to join us. I think that's how John Lord found out about Ritchie, because he didn't know who he was. We told him he was the greatest guitarist, and I think that's when he was asked by Chris Curtis about a guitarist. He said, "Well, I've heard about this Ritchie Blackmore." Curtis obviously knew him. John had come from Leicester, but all the Londoners knew Ritchie, as he'd lived in Southall, but a mile from Simper's house. He played with Carlo and Lord Such, and we were urging John all the time. Somehow Bobby Woodman got involved, and Bobby Woodman's the drummer. I can't recall how, and then John said, would you give up all the money we're getting in the flower pot, men, a regular 150 pounds or so, for a small wage to do what we want to do? And I said, give me the chance. He said, well, I know a couple of businessmen that are willing to put some money up, so would you give it a go? And I said, yeah. I said, who are you going to get on drums? I told Carlo I was going to split from the group with John, and Carlo was a bit upset because he was a drummer. And he hadn't been asked to join. So basically he said, who you got? And he said, Bobby Woodman. And that was Carlo Little's idol, apparently. And he was like a legend. He'd played with all these British groups and stuff. So he said, as soon as he found out that that's who the drummer was, his feelings weren't hurt anymore, because he considered Bobby Woodman to be the guy. Bobby Woodman had gotten his start learning jazz from Eric Delaney, another jazz drummer. And Delaney had his own band and released singles in the 1950s, including the hits Cockles and Mussels and Oranges and Lemons. Food-based hits.
Okay.
Cockles
Perfect
and
for
Mussels.
the food podcast.
That would be perfect. Perfect crossover episode. Cockles and Mussels and Oranges and Lemons. Unbelievable. And he also had a song called Delaney's Delight. That's great.
All right, they had some weird song titles back then.
It was the 50s. I would like to. We're gonna have to put maybe I'll have to put in the at the end of the show. I'll have to put a little snippet from Cockles and Mussels. So that is kind of how Bobby Woodman, who we'll talk about in a bit, got involved. That was kind of the start of Roundabout. So where do I go here? Woodman had also played with Big Jim Sullivan, who was Ritchie's guitar teacher, in a band called the Beat Boys, and they changed their name to Marty Wild's Beat Boys, and then back to the Beat Boys, and became a backing band for Bill Fury. After this, Woodman joined Vince and the Playboys backing band to tour America. They were invited there by Vince's brother-in-law, who was Joseph Barbera, none other than Joseph Barbera of the legendary Hanna-Barbera. Brought them in. So you've got Bill Cosby bankrolling Deep Purple. You got Hanna-Barbera bankrolling these guys.
Wow.
Interesting times.
Wow, it's very a lot of more connectivity to the Deep Purple family tree than we thought.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets even more so. In 1960, the Kenny Pavel left the band as a guitarist, and he was briefly replaced by Jimmy Page, who was in the band with Woodman, who was 16 years old at the time. He then had a group called the Bobby Woodman Noise before returning with Vince Taylor and leaving and taking the name Bobby Clark. So he kind of changed his name to Bobby Clark at this point. But a lot of people still knew him as Bobby Woodman. And then they changed the name of the band to the Bobby Clark Noise. In 1965, Bobby decided to go to America, start a career there. He filled in on a number of recordings for the band Love with Arthur Lee, and he played and recorded with Vince Flaherty. He then also went on to play with the band leader Arthur Lee at this club called Beto Lido's, and there he played with Daryl Dragon, who's better known as Captain from Captain and Tennille. So he's rubbing noses with Hanna-Barbera, Jimmy Page, Captain from Captain and Tennille.
Daryl Dragon.
Daryl Dragon. How do you change your name to Captain when your name's Daryl Dragon? That's his legitimate name.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Daryl Dragon and Tennille would have sold as many. I mean, I would have checked it out. I'd be like, oh, Daryl Dragon sounds heavy.
Yeah, it sounds like some heavy metal. Daryl Dragon and Tennille. They just leave Tennille the same. Tennille wasn't even her name. Like, weren't there two Tennilles?
No, I think her name was Tony Tennille, so I think that might have been her last name.
But didn't they get another Tennille, like, to replace her, and they just called her Tennille?
I mean, they probably could have.
Captain
I mean,
Cap-
if they were out touring,
Captain
if they
Daryl
were out
Dragon and
touring
Tennille.
today, I wouldn't have known. What?
I'm trying to
Are
past
they?
memory.
Are they?
Well,
Like,
no, maybe not. Maybe I'm just. I thought it was like a scenario where like she was like the Tommy Thayer of somebody dressed up like Tennille played it, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, like I was saying, if they went on tour like today or something like that, I wouldn't know the difference. You just like have the name recognition. They're just like, well, keep us together. I'd be
Yeah,
like,
the
all right,
Captain and Tennille, they could put any two, any guy and lady up there that are kind of old, and I'd buy it.
yeah. And they're just like, hey, I know that song.
Love will keep us together. Okay, so he played with Captain Tennille. Then he became the first UK rock star to be deported from America for cannabis possession. So started a
Jeez.
trend there. In 1966, Clark played with the Frank Zappa band. So he's just racking up some amazing names. Then he played in a band called the Elves Themselves, which is a great name. Which featured on guitar Jimi Hendrix. So
Jeez.
this guy, and we're only in 1966 here. This guy is playing with Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Frank Zappa, Daryl Dragon, you name it. He's playing with everybody. So he goes to France after this, and he has a third run with Vince Taylor. And then he went to a band with America with a band he just called The Noise, worked with a number of artists, including Dave Curtis, who was formerly of the Tremors, and his brother Chris Curtis, who we just talked about was the kind of original starter of the Roundabout band. So Nick Simper has this to say. Dave Curtis and I met at John's flat when John moved out there to my parents because we were introduced. I remember him from Dave Curtis and the Tremors. He was quite a nice singer, but not for us. We wanted a guy called Terry Reid, but he wasn't interested. He was an amazing singer. We were sitting in Deeves Hall, the four of us, starting writing, and Bobby clearly wasn't interested in our sort of music. He was still living in the Johnny Kidd era. Great days, but we'd seen Vanilla Fudge, which turned us on, and we wanted to create something new. But he wasn't interested, so it just used to be the three of us trying to write things. The three of us meaning him, I guess it would have been him, Blackmore, Lord, and then Dave Curtis was there too. So I'm not sure what he means by the three of us. One night we had a party and invited a few friends there, and Tony Tacone came along. I don't know who that is. I said we needed a singer, and he said, "What about Gillan?" And I said, "Yeah, what's he doing?" He was with Episode 6. So although I didn't know him personally, I I'd met him personally just to say how to do. He'd always seemed a bit distant when I met him at gigs because he was usually the supporting group supporting the Bergeracs, which was Nick Simper's older band. Once I remember, and I said to Tony, "Would you ask him? Tell him we've got tell him what we've got because you've seen it all." He was obviously impressed. Um, because we had banks of Marshalls and a nice big house. Tell Gillan what's it about and ask him if he's interested. Sorry, I got to make this font bigger. I can't read at this distance. I'm getting old. Here we go. The next night, Tony rang me up and said, "I can remember almost the exact words." He said, "I've spoken to Gillan and he's not interested." He said, "You'll never go anywhere and Episode 6 are going to make it big." I said, "Oh, well, tell him where to stick it." Because he came across as Flash. Came across like that. The others didn't know who he was and said, "What about your mate?" And I said, "He's not interested." I asked Roger Truth to come in and audition as a drummer, and he didn't want to know. So he says they auditioned at Deeves Halls for about 5 weeks looking for a singer. He thinks he really hit it off with Bobby. But Tony Edwards said they decided they had to get rid of Bobby. So he went to Pace, and what does Simper say? He says, "All I said was you shouldn't mess around with the guy. He's come over from France, uprooted himself over here, lived here for years. He knows you're not happy with him. Why don't you tell him straight?" And they didn't have the guts, so they had to get Coletta and Edwards to fire him. Tony says, "Bobby, we want to terminate the contract and we'll give you 20 pounds. And old Coletta nudges him quietly, saying, 40 pounds expenses." There was a big silence, and Bobby says, and he's writing in this accent, "I don't think that's very nice at all. It's him, isn't it? It's Blackmore." He's writing it like that, so I have to say it. "He don't like me." Even in those days, John's going, "I'm your friend, Bobby." So anyways, he packs his bags, and Rod and Ian, who were with the Mays, packed their bags and moved in with us, and that was the start of it all. So yeah, that was the start of well, that was the beginning and the end of Bobby Woodman's time in Roundabout. And then Ian Pace has like something he did like an interview on one of his things, I think during COVID when he had his YouTube channel, where he talks about sneaking in and taking Woodman's spot in the band. Um, so so after this, Edwards and Coletta tell Dave Curtis that they'll start their own band, and they bring in Steve Howe who just left the band tomorrow, Clive Skinner, and Bobby Clark. So Steve Howe, of the four of these guys, is the most well known. He goes on to be in Yes. Originally, Howe says he was working on the studio, and that led him to Deep Purple's management, where he was enticed to form the band. They were originally called Canto. They recorded a few demos, and then the band was named. This is the funny part. The band is named after the first three letters of their names: Bobby, B-O, Dave, D-A, and S-T for Steve. But there's four guys in the band. So
Who got screwed?
Clive Skinner. So
Skinner.
Steve Howe says, not the best method to settle on a group name, particularly as there was no reference to Clive.
The
They
poor
should have named them
bastard.
Bodastical. CL Clive.
Or
Bodastical.
or Bodast Skinner.
Bodast Skinner. Principal Skinner.
Yeah, yeah, all right, whatever. I mean, they wound up not being anything anyway, so who cares?
John's like, I'm not going to further analyze that. But there's a little bit about it in Steve Howe's book, All My Yesterdays. He talks a little bit about the band Bodast. And there's a lot of stuff. I got actually a million links in the show notes this week because there is a lot of actual really interesting history about this band. And then I've got this 2017 release, The Bodast Towards Utopia, which has a good booklet. And it has, but what we're going to focus now is on the Bodast tapes, which is so Clive Skinner dies in 1978. Howe starts thinking about him and decides he's going to resurrect these tapes, remaster them, and release them. And they did it in like one day and released them as the Bodast tapes featuring Steve Howe, which is what we're going to listen to. And then, hey, maybe a bonus episode down the line where we could do all these other bonus tracks. But for now, we'll kind of focus on that. It says in the Bodast tapes on the back that Clive Skinner joined at a later date, so that might be why he's not in the band name. But Steve Howe seems to not know why. So apparently there's some other guy, Bruce Thomas, who allegedly played bass with him at some point too. He worked with Paul Rogers and Mickey Moody in the Roadrunners, and then went on to work with Elvis Costello in the Attractions. But some people also say that he was just around and he didn't play with the band. So they set up a house. They were paid a weekly salary. He says this is right around the times the Beatles released the White Album, and that this was great because he said he's never been supported this way before or since, as like they were given a house, given all this time, given all this money to just sit there and be creative and record music, which is like pretty amazing for any musician. So for the band, we've got acoustic guitar and vocals, Clive Skinner, more commonly known as Clive Muldoon. Him and Dave Curtis would split off and do Curtis Muldoon band with Purple Records later. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. On acoustic, lead guitar, and bass on one track, we have Steve Howe. And then bass guitar, vocals, Dave Curtis, who is also Dave Lawrence Atkins, the brother of Chris Curtis from the Searchers. Sometimes it's spelled with one S, sometimes it's spelled with two S. I don't understand why, but the Curtis name for both of them, I've seen it both ways, so kind of weird. And then on drums, Bobby Clark, who we kind of gave a little background of there. So he finds these tapes, remasters them, engineered by Jeff Emmerich, Keith West, all of these kind of former Beatles engineers and stuff. So pretty storied collection here. And then he says that in his book, Steve Howe says that the Towards Utopia version, which I have here, is the best version. So I kind of put that together with the Bodast tapes artwork, and that's what we'll listen to. All right. So that's the background of how Bodastical came to be.
Yeah, totally Bodastical.
Totally Bodast. That would have been a great word in the 80s. Totally Bodast. I always thought, like, when I saw Bodast, I always thought that was like I thought it was a word when I first saw it. Like, can you believe the Bodast on this guy? Or like, like I thought
it does.
it sounds like a word that means like, like you got a, big brass balls, that guy's
Yeah,
got some Bodast to come around here after the shenanigans
that
he was
he's been
pulling on us.
pulling. Yeah,
But it's not. It's just it's actually a band name created in the absolute dumbest possible way.
yeah. Oh well.
But speaking of things that aren't dumb, our patrons at our core level, before we get into the music here, coming in at the $7.77 Keep It Warm Rat tier, we have Michael Vader. At the $6.99 new nice price tier, we have none other than Spike the Rock Cat and Sugar Tea. At the episode $6.66 tier, we have Steve Coldwell, Arthur Smith,
Getting support from the patron Arthur Smith.
Anton Glaving and Charles Meadows. At the $6.65 Almost Evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore, Michael Bagford, and Richie Sucksmith. At the $6 What's Going On Here tier, we have Richard Fusey. At the $5.99 The Nice Price tier, Robert Smith and Carl Helberg. And at the 60 kroner Scandinavian Nights tier, we have Newt Morton Johansson.
It's a great life if you know we can.
At the $5 Moneylender tier, John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Elman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikov, Kev Roberts, Percival Frequency, Scott Zern, Cynthia Doobie, Raf Calf, and Coyote Bongwater. Coyote's really hitting close to home now. Well, I'm getting a little nervous walking around. Luckily, my dog is too big. Where is she? Oh, she's over there on the floor.
You lost track of her already.
Lost track of the dog. All right, are we ready to get into some of these tracks?
Oh yeah, let's see if how bodastical this is. How
And
totally
totally
bodastical, dude.
Bodastical, dude. This is kind of classified as psychedelic rock. So I know not your cup of tea. It's late 60s psychedelic rock. And full disclosure, I have not listened to this at all. So
Okay.
other than the first maybe 10 seconds of the first song to just get levels before we start recording. So this will be a first listen for both of us, kind of get our reactions. Opens up, the Bodast tapes opens up with a track called Do You Remember, which was written by Chris Curtis. So here we go. Do You Remember? Psychedelic. Almost doing like proto metal chugging on the guitar.
Yeah, very 60s rock sounding.
Yeah. Almost punk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I enjoy the dry production as opposed to the drenched in reverb production of the first couple of Deep Purple albums.
Yeah.
Like, I much prefer this style of production from the 60s. So it makes it sound a little harder.
Good energy to it.
The guitar player's going berserk.
Yeah, Steve Howe. And I gotta admit, I don't know much about Steve Howe. Like, I know a little, yes, but definitely not. I had Fragile, basically. I had the LP of Fragile. Probably still got Fragile or something. But that's a much different, even though it's not a huge amount of time after this. It's definitely a different thing. Very good. Like, it's very sloppy, sort of.
Sloppy in a good way.
Yeah.
Just that kind of loose rock and roll that you like to hear when you don't want anything that's too clean.
I like the album cover. It's just like, you know, because they were calling them all like the lost Bodast tapes, you know. And it was like a guy in the woods, just like with a shovel. He just dug a hole and found these reels.
Hey, this is where they put them.
I gotta say, it sounds really good considering they were buried in the dirt for 10 years. Definitely got like a very like, it's like, yeah, it's like it's got this very like proto punk, proto metal. Kind of like a weird like little George Harrison sort of outro solo there, but kind of cool, a little different than I was.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect.
So that was. Do you remember? What do you think about that one? Do you have your
So
rating spreadsheet? open?
are we rating them? Yeah,
I don't know. Should we? It's like kind of like a proper release album. So
is it? All right. Yeah, hang on. I haven't I moved some stuff around on
little
my
fun.
phone since the last time we recorded.
As we record this, this is the official last day of the kids' winter break, and I've gotten texts from all the dads and
Yeah.
of all of the friends saying the kids have got to go back to school. They're all tired of them.
I'm sure. Okay. Okay, so you did put it in the spreadsheet. You know, I mean, it's
I mean, I think I think a good caveat here is when we rank things, we got to kind of rank them as what they are, and
yeah.
you know,
I mean, yeah. I
it's
mean,
hard.
I know what you mean. I'll say it. I'll say 3.5. I wasn't prepared to rank, I guess, but
Okay.
because I didn't know if it was one of these you know, we're going to listen to it and it's a historical curiosity type thing. But
Oh yeah.
I would say for what I was expecting, it was better. You know, it was like a kind of a blues based, like you said, almost a punky sounding,
Yeah.
really loose sounding, just rock. You know, which I think was really great for around that time. Is I feel like you got one or the others. You got these jam bands, or like if you're very experimental, like these kind of maybe not greatly produced, you know, washed away in reverb type of stuff. Like you sound like they're in a huge hall, like the first couple of Deep Purple albums, like
Yeah.
that type of thing. And then you have these, which kind of like that on the edge type of 60s. Like this kind of stuff actually became more like um like marginal,
Yeah.
which I mean, I think I've always liked that kind of stuff. Like I liked it before it was cool, man. Um, but yeah, this is definitely different than what I expected, and good. I thought it was pretty good. I like I don't know how much stuff you hear with a guitar player is like that busy in like some of these early 60s
Yeah.
things. Usually they kind of take a back seat and they'd be like dun 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 dun, you know, they're just playing like two strings or something. But
Well, yeah,
um,
it's like he's almost
yeah,
playing like almost like country like bluegrass picking. It almost sounds
yeah, yeah.
like an Albert Lee
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. But I think uh I think with this, well, it was also mixed by Steve Howe, so obviously the guitar is going to be a little up in the mix. um, but yeah, I'll also give it a 3.5 for what, you know, again, for what it is. It is better than I was expecting. It's really got a good energy to it, and you know, if you take into account, you can't really compare this to the most recent Deep Purple album as far as production goes. It's from a completely different era. So
Yeah.
I'd say for a low budget beginner band where one of the guys went on to greatness, it's pretty good solid start.
I think so.
The next track up is called
All right, this is more like what I would expect when you
Yeah,
said,
this
here's a
is-
60s band.
And I'm trying to imagine this through like a modern lens, like if this was produced and recorded even 4 years later when production was so much different. And this one was written by Skinner and Howe.
I feel like this would be like, if it were in with today's production, would have been be like some kind of indie, definitely an indie band.
Yeah. If anybody knows who that guy is that's digging up the tapes in the woods, let us know.
Some interesting like sections.
Yeah, nice arrangement.
In here.
Very short song.
Yeah, interesting time changes and shit going on here.
Wow. Fade it out. Funny, the song's 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It felt like it went like 12 different places.
Yeah, they really packed a lot in there, huh?
Yeah, that could have, with all the things they had, if they wanted to make this into an epic 6-minute track, probably could have done it fairly easily.
Glad they didn't.
Yes. That would have been too much, but Beyond Winter, John, what do you think?
I'll give another 3.5. I like what I'm hearing so far. You know,
Yeah.
not bad stuff. Pretty good. Different.
Yeah, I'm really digging it for what it is, you know. And this must have been a real treat, you know, for like a Steve Howe fan who had been a big fan of his, and then to have this early stuff come out must have just been amazing.
Mm.
So what do you like have any, I know it's not your cup of tea, but yes, like what do you have any background with them, or have you, like, I don't
No,
think we've
not
ever talked
really.
about Yes.
No. Yeah, other than their hits,
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah, the only things I think that I really know by Yes is Roundabout, which, interesting that we're talking about early Deep Purple.
Hmm.
I think everyone knows that song, and I know that song, and listening to that album, because I heard that song. I remember hearing it when I was a kid and being like, this is amazing. It's amazing bass guitar production on it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to it with Paul, who just thought the lyrics were so ridiculous. Just I always laugh when I hear the song, like, in and around the lake, mountains come out of the sky and stand there. And he's like singing it, so Paul's like, what the hell are these lyrics? In and around the lake? Like, what is this? And there's another song on that album, I can't remember which one, that he thought was ridiculous. So it was hard to listen to it. I think I listened to it my first time with Paul, but
Yeah.
I was getting his running commentary, so I didn't get to fully appreciate it
Until
Um,
later, yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of my exposure to that. And then, of course, Owner of a Lonely Heart, which is after Steve Howe left the band and very much different.
Yeah.
They kind of got a little poppy with that, but from what I understand, that's a huge album for them, for them, in that era. But yeah, did I rank this one?
No.
3.5. I give it a 3.5 as well. I think it's pretty solid. All right, next track up on side 1 of this recovered LP, recovered from a hole in the woods, Once in a Lifetime. A very raw sounding acoustic guitar. You can hear the pick scraping against the strings. Sounds like it's not entirely in tune.
I can hear it, yeah.
When I used to record, like if we were recording something, like starting something new, I would like restring my guitar, scratch out all the strings really good, and like, get them all so they have the brightest, cleanest sound. I was like, that's it. Nobody cares. Like Steve Howe, I don't think he even tuned his guitar before this. He's like, this is fine. What I was expecting from this as well.
Yeah, it's a little more closely aligned with what I would think a psychedelic 60s band would sound like.
A cool effect on the lead here. Now,
Clearly not a run-of-the-mill guitar player, though.
No, he's very, very distinct style.
Yeah, like, I mean, you can even tell on this. I think that's maybe what makes it stick out, is that Steve Howe was always guess he must have always been a little innovative or distinct. Or at least by this point, he was starting to
later
be.
in the album. Yes, fans will be able to appreciate that he repurposed some of these Bodast riffs and pieces from the Yes songs. I probably will not be able to pick up on it, but fading out all those tracks so far.
I would say that the guitar in that one definitely had that the first song you kind of pointed out, it had that what is it, almost like a country finger picking type of thing, or chicken picking.
I don't know. Is he? Yeah, chicken picking is a good. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm looking at this picture of Steve Howe near, and I apologize to our listeners who probably everyone knows more about Yes than we do. But I don't know if he was a fingerstyle player mostly, or I'm looking at some pictures from the Steve Howe book here to see if I can see the cover photo looks like it looks like he's holding a pick in some of these, but maybe kind of goes back and forth.
Well, either way, I mean, his sound and his style are very, like, I could see that from the first song to this one is that it's almost kind of like to me it sounds very kind of country-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not a bad thing, but definitely distinct for this kind of style of music, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. All right. What do you think of what are you going to give that one?
I'll give it a 2.5. Not as I didn't like it as much as the other ones, but I thought the guitar playing stood out.
All right. I'll give it a 3. I thought it was pretty it's enjoyable, pleasant
Hmm.
music. Obviously the production is they didn't put a ton behind it, but I find with anything that era, like you said, I appreciate it versus the debut Deep Purple album because they're not everything is washed in reverb.
Yeah.
There's some effects, but they're not going overboard with it. It's like they had just invented reverb, so everyone had to put it on every song, and it gets a
Yeah.
little too much. The last track on the first side of this album is called Black Leather Gloves. Kind of like that weird discordant chord there for the progression.
Pretty heavy.
Black leather gloves on me and a wall of an igloo make the body cold. If the toothpaste turns black too, then the right power is able to complete its stage in hell.
It's a very weird song.
But I could hear this. You were talking about modern production, maybe modern playing be like a heavy song.
Oh yeah.
Plus black leather gloves. Sounds heavy.
Well, I generally, if you're going for a heavy song, I recommend against the use of the word toothpaste in lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the lyrics for this song. I can't find them. Well, apparently this is on Spotify.
Gloves on me in a wall of an igloo make the body cold.
Nice dynamics though.
Toothpaste turns black too. Then the right power is able to complete its
Cool harmonizing.
Toothpaste turns black too. Like laying down a little groove for a second. Like that progression is very heavy. You can almost hear that behind like an Aussie song or something.
This song I just been singing, please do not believe. This one's just for me.
Interesting they didn't have a keyboardist. So many bands at this time did. Richie's in there as well. Kind of reminds me of what's that 10 years after that has that song. I'd love to change the world. You know which one I'm talking about?
From who?
10 years after.
Um, I don't know. I don't know why I made that noise. Like,
I made him choke.
No. I it's one of those where if I heard it, like this song is stuck in my head now. So what was it called?
I'd love to change the world, but I don't know what to do. And then it's like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it gets into like a real like heavy part. It's like it has
Yeah.
like a descending progression similar to that.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. No, I got
But they
it.
have two very, very stark different progressions. but kind of reminds me of that song for some reason.
Hmm.
Anyway, that was Black Leather Gloves. That one was written a solo effort by Skinner. as the writer.
Skinner.
Skinner. What do you think of that one? This is ripe for some Principal Skinner memes.
Yeah. um, I gotta say, I liked it. I'll give it a 4.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, he, and I mean, I'm focusing mostly on Steve Howe because obviously he's the standout here, but it's, I feel like he's got this very kind of like, in a couple of the songs I've heard this kind of grandiose type playing, the way he strums or picks, he goes bum ba-da-lam, bum ba-da-lam, bum,
Yeah,
like that. It's
yeah.
just very like, it just sounds very like when you do that kind of thing, it's kind of grandiose sounding, like if you kind of take a guitar and you go dun dun dun, it's like you're announcing something or whatever.
Do, 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 do.
Yes, exactly, like that, like you're calling attention to it. It's a very, I think distinct here. And I like the dynamics in the song too, how they brought it down and they had the little groove starting, and even the harmonizing vocals during that kind of breakdown section were pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it, like, and I'm listening to it through, okay, this is a demo, and
Yeah.
again, what you said at the same time, thinking to myself, what would this be today? And
Yep.
I could see a band picking this up and making kind of a heavy rock song out of it, because it has those elements.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll give this one a 3.5 again. I also really like it. It's probably my favorite so far, but I
Mhm.
don't know if I can push it to a 4. But it's really I like the progress. I'm always something in a minor key with a progression like that. I'm usually a fan of. But yeah, it's interesting how it's this is just before Black Sabbath. This is around the same time Deep Purple's doing their first album, and to think of it in that context, they're definitely doing some really cool stuff. It's of its time, and there's some of the kind of little more hippy dippy moments, but I do like that track a lot.
I agree.
Which brings us to the second side of the album. This song is called Tired Towers. Almost sounded at first like Ring That Net. You hear that listening to Bobby Woodman's drums, very like backbeat 60s British.
Yeah.
I like he's definitely doing some really interesting guitar work.
Yeah.
And those vocals just sound so. I don't know what it is about the production, about the vocals. They sound 5 years earlier than they are. Sound like they were recorded with Scrappy Monk. This would be a great place to pluck some cool covers from like a newer band. Cover one of these songs, no one would know what the heck it was.
Trying to think, this makes me think of something, but I don't know.
I'm gonna have to listen to Fragile again as it's the only Yes album I really know to see if I can pick out on some of this stuff. It's so different.
But that guitar melody, what
Yeah.
yeah, that is something else. And I
It's
can't.
a lick that I always play on the guitar, so I don't. It's something I know Dan used to play a lot. The like, so I put it in my playing often. That was kind of what I was most taken by. I was like, wow, I do that a lot. That's weird that he's doing it so much in this song since
Yeah, but
we
it's
slip out and
it's something prominently that I've heard in another song that I'm familiar with anyways, and
he'll
I
send me
can't.
the 3 a.m. text.
The non-existent 3 a.m. text, because neither one of us is ever awake at 3 a.m.
Yeah, well,
Let's-
lately I have been. I just keep
let's-
waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think it's because my dog is just like rustling or something. So
uh,
I discovered that on the iPhone they have like these background sounds you can put, and there's like a background sound of like rain. So I just like put my earbuds in and I listen to the rain and I go back to sleep. So I'll check my phone when I wake up at 3 o'clock to see if you sent me anything. All right, what do you give this one?
yeah, this was I think this was another pretty decent one. I'll give it a 3.
All
Um,
right.
Again, I'm really enjoying the guitar playing, but in this song, I'm thinking to myself, if they didn't have those kind of like try hard Beatles vocals in there that everybody was
Yeah.
trying to sound like, and they had like somebody like Gillan was singing the way that he would
Gillan or
be in a
Dio or
couple.
something like that.
Yeah, exactly. If one of the even if they were singing the way that they were then, their voices were definitely distinct. They didn't have that nasally, whiny type of tone. What?
I was just waiting for the more adjectives to keep coming. Nasally, whiny.
Beatley. I know. Don't worry, I'm not hating on the Beatles. I'm just saying that that whole style of singing was very
Yeah.
one dimensional, or it sounds that way these days. And I think that if somebody like Gillan or Dio, um, which are two good examples of people back then, even Rod, um,
Oh yeah.
because he had that sexy, silky voice.
Mhm.
I think it would have lent
Or
something.
Ethel.
I
Your
thi-
tired towers with
I think it would have
bells.
lent something different to the song, but
That would
that's
definitely lend something different.
oh yeah, that would have been very different. But a different style of vocals would have definitely elevated it a little bit. Just a observation
Yeah. I'll give
from.
it a 3.5. I like the vocals, but it was hard not to focus on how poorly recorded they were. It was very
Mm,
like muffled sound. It sounded like they had a sock over the microphone and not just like like a big wool sock. It was just it wasn't very clear, but again, given the time and everything, I'm not. But it's interesting because this was engineered by some of the guys who worked with the Beatles. So,
yeah,
um, but yeah, if you could clean that up a little bit, but I think it's a great song that you could do something with. And it might have been interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what they sounded like live, but the chances of that resurfacing are pretty much zero. So, all right, next song up is called Mr. Jones. Not the I'm hoping that when I put this on, it's going to be that Counting Crows song. They stole it from Bodast, and we're going to be the ones that uncover it. But I don't think that's going to be what it is, because it's funny. I was looking up last night, and I typed something in Google like Mr. Jones, and it was like And you know, it goes like this suggested questions like that people put in Google is like, who is the first band to record the song Mr. Jones? And I clicked on it, it said Counting Crows. I was like, wrong. Bodast beat them to it.
We'll see.
But I would lose my mind if this was that song, but it won't be. Here we go. A song called Mr. Jones.
Here's to the future, Mr. Jones. I don't think we can make it.
Chords are going all over the place.
I've tried. It's not worth the effort. But may your beauty never fade. May it always be written on your door.
Now you know me. I'm not the foremost Beatles expert here, but this reminds you of a Beatles song?
When you're playing with my shadow, you'll imagine me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't live under a rock. I've heard the Beatles, but this makes me think of something that I've heard by them. You know, everything back then was probably derivative anyways, but
Yeah, they wouldn't be the only band that was trying to copy the Beatles. The opening chord progression, that little descending line, kind of reminds me of the opening for Happiness is a Warm Gun. But the rest of it, I don't know. But I like that little funky thing they do after they say Mr. Jones, and then the chord
Yeah.
they go to after that is really weird.
And here's to all your next of kin. May there ever be many with your name. But all you Joneses look the same.
All you Joneses look the same.
Playing with my shadow, you'll imagine me. There with you, the sun that
Other than that, yeah, I mean, I think it sounds inspired, but I can't really put my finger on anything specific.
and here's to all your next of kin. May there ever be many with your name. It's a pity all you Joneses look the same.
And that sounded like think of it because I've just been listening to this, but it sounded like the end of the Beatles song. I'm sure Rich is listening to it, yelling at me right now, but who cares? It'll come back to me later. All right. So what do you think about Mr. Jones?
oh. Ooh. Hang on. Okay, I just did something incorrect here on the spreadsheet. Fumbling.
Oh, I thought you were changing ratings around.
Yeah, no, that was an accident. I was in the wrong cell. Yeah, so I guess yeah, Rich will be yelling at me through this because I'm going to give this one a 4, and he'll be
Whoa.
like, "Oh, so you don't like the Beatles, but you like something Beatles-esque."
Yeah.
I mean, regardless, I think that it was this was another strong one. I like that little funky part you said, the chord
Yeah.
change that they did after they said Mr. Jones. I thought it was I think there's something percussive too about some of these songs and like the
Yeah.
playing in them that makes them very different. Even though they're kind of in that vein of sounding very loose, that percussiveness makes them sound tight at the same time.
Mm.
In a way. I mean, I don't know. I just feel that that's a kind of a mark of good musicianship. At least he put some time, or they put some time into thinking about, here's how we're going to play it, or here's how I'm going to phrase this guitar part, rather than just oh, here's a demo where we're bouncing up and down and in suits like this and
Your
just,
camera's bouncing up and down.
generic. What?
Your camera was like bouncing with you as you did that, shaking all around.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, I
Not,
think it's interesting because it's like, yeah, he does that dong ding doo doo dong ding doo doo dong. He's doing this like progression, but then all of a sudden he throws in these like staccato stabs like dum dum ding, and
yeah.
like jumps, and then he goes to that weird chord that I kind of don't like, but I kind of got used to it as the song went on. But
Hmm.
it's interesting. I'm gonna give it another 3.5. I think it's a really, I
Hmm.
think from a songwriting standpoint, that we're really onto something. They did some really, really creative stuff through some stuff in there. It's one of those things they just hadn't, they didn't have enough momentum or enough time to really work on this. But I could see this being a band that, I mean, if you look at the early works of Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, the Black Sabbath stuff before they were even called Black Sabbath, any of that stuff, it's all sounding pretty similar to this. I could
Hmm.
see if they had been granted the ability to work on stuff and do a couple new albums, even listening to the Curtis Muldoon stuff a couple years after this, it sounds like
Hmm.
they really took it to the next level. So it'd be amazing to hear what this band would have been like if they'd gotten a third or fourth or fifth album and
Sure.
gone into the early 70s when things just started to get, production started to get so much better and things just started to get so much more interesting.
Hmm.
But yeah, the next track up is a song called 1000 Years.
Little slide.
Yep. Or screwdriver, we don't know.
Drop of a watery climax. I saw the judge, he was waiting for children. People
Look
were
on your face.
cheering, the whole world was
This is, I think, what you were expecting the whole album to sound like.
Yeah.
Someone was waiting, their axes were sharpened. Expensive ladies were crying and laughing.
So it's like the Lost Rocky Horror Picture Show song.
Yeah, put them to death. Must be 1,000 years I've been here. 1,000 years I've been here. 1,000 years and a long time to go. Fate is the answer to all victims' problems, but when the truth is never the ending, where can we go? What do
Like they
we
took out the
know?
maracas and they brought them back.
I guess it's like, oh, it's my turn.
Let's have a battle of our own making. Carry on normal, carry on taking. We shall take over.
Sounds almost like a,
forever and ever. Yeah, put them to death.
like one of those like Blarney Stone drinking songs. Oh, we drink and we drink and we drink
Yeah.
and we drink. You know, like one of those.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Ween has a song where they kind of parody that style, and it's just reminding me of that. The song's called 1,000 Years, but it is the shortest song on the album.
Feels like it's taken 1,000 years for it to end. I don't want to give away what my rating's gonna be.
You know, I mean, I think that cringe when it first started already gave it away.
For my comments here. Yeah, my face earlier.
Looked like somebody farted in your room. All right, Jonathan, 1,000 Years. What do you think?
Not so good. Yeah, I didn't really like this. This sounded kind of like that kind of folky 60s meandering crap that I don't really enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll give it a 2.
You read my mind. I'm also giving it a 2. There was one part where they were like kind of harmonizing. Where I was like, this part has a little promise, but yeah, overall it was not my
Yeah.
favorite. That was a Skinner penned track as well, solo. The last track on the album is called Nether Street, which is the name of the street their house was on that they were kind of recording and doing all this. This was written by Skinner, Curtis, and Howe. So that was so who's left out in that? Bobby is left out in that. So this is just Dast who wrote this one, or Dastical, I should say.
Okay.
The Skinner wrote it, but he doesn't get 2 letters. So this was later renamed Worm and was reused as part of the song Starship Trooper from the Yes album, 1971. I think that was the first one that Howe was in. Howe says that a fragment of the songs he was working on for Bodast also turned up later in Yes's South Side of the Sky, Close to the Edge, and Asia's One Step Closer. As, of course, Howe was in Asia as well. Asia! Do you ever see that Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL? Where they do, it's like all this, it's like
Yeah.
Sean Connery, Burt Reynolds, and
Yeah.
and they, they're just making fun of how dumb celebrities are. So they do, I think it's Sean Connery spins it and he gets the audio daily double, and it's the category is continents, and it's like the audio is Asia. It's just a guy saying Asia. Every time I see Asia, I think of that. It's just too good. Audio clue, Asia. All right, here we go. This track, final track on the album, Nether Street. That's really reminding me of something.
Lola by the
Oh.
Kinks.
Hey, that wasn't it, but yeah.
I was just thinking,
It was something
Yoda, Yoda.
Run out in the night, hey, hey. He'll come to you, wake 'em by your breathing. Every other season of the sun. When the ghost of Nether Street makes his mind up.
frantic. Last song here.
All right. That was really good.
I could see them kind of going into Captain Beyond territory if they had continued on this route,
Yeah, you know what? That's a good call on that one.
It's not as proggy as I expected, but they've got those little short segments and the changes around. Captain Beyond song will go in 11 different places in 3 minutes,
Yeah, but that last part, I could picture Captain Beyond.
Undecided what the hell is guiding him when the ghost of Nether Street makes his mind up.
This is their most bodastical song so far.
I would bodastically agree with that.
Our crusade to make the 2024 year word of the year bodastical.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I love that shit.
I really
You know
like how
that.
it's playing. I feel like
Well, it makes me think of probably what, like you said, somebody like Tony Iommi, Ace Frehley, those guys were that wound up making that pentatonic blues style,
yeah.
really incorporating into their playing. That really reminded me of that, but that makes me think of what they played on some of their early demos or how they must have sounded before evolving into the 70s. But yeah, that's, some of those blue scale tricks of the trade.
Yep.
I can recognize them.
100%. All right, that's Nether Street, the album closer. I mean, if you want to call it an album, it's sort of a compilation, but
Just the closer.
the closer. Kara
Yeah.
Sedgwick.
Um,
What do you give this one?
I'll say a 3.5. I thought it went out on a good note. I think that I was really I'm impressed by the songwriting, really, as well as the performing. This overall, even though it wasn't a proper album, I guess you could say it ended on the right way. Like I don't know if like the track ordering is just dictated by how they found the demos or whatever, but I thought it went out pretty strong for a compilation. Like if somebody was making the decision, like, okay, this is the last song to go out on, I thought it was pretty strong.
100%. I agree. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That is the Bodast tapes. As John fumbles with the spreadsheet, I will do my part, which is to thank our next level of patrons. And for some reason, it's all messed up in my show notes. Ah, there it is. All right. All right, so here we go. Speaking of our patrons here, at the foundation level section, we have at the $3.50 Deep Purple New York tier, we have Long Lordford. Lord Longford. At the £3 aromatic feed tier, we have Simon Ford and Richard Brees. At the $3.33 halfway to evil tier, Stephen Sharp and Duncan Leask. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, we have Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback,
I love it.
Stuart McCord. Then we have Ivan Fjeldbu,
It's a great life if you know we can.
Runar Simonsen,
It's a great life if you know we can.
JJ Stenard, Ruinous Inadequacies, John Maselli.
Angela, when I was 12 years old, I had this good friend, Philly Cartuccio.
That's all I had.
That was plenty. Philly
Michael
Cartuccio.
Phil Cartuccio. Michael Boyette, and of course, Corey Morissette from the wonderful and the podcast Will Rock podcast. At the $1.71 tier, we have
Rich, Yangui, Shalo.
At the 10 kroner tier, Karsten Lau. And at the $1 made up name tier, we have the 1,000 Years of Drips, the Leaky Mausoleum, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Hank the Tank, Private Eyes, Ashen Lionel, Blackmore Tights,
Blackmore tights.
Steve Down to Earth Kohler, Zwapper the Electric Alchemist, Anders Engstrom, Ashley Still I Hear Burn Rose, ICDC, and of course, our newest patron,
New patron.
Durple Purple. Thank you for joining us at the $1 silly made up name tier. And speaking of names that aren't made up and are not silly, Stephen Somerville sent us a picture just the other day. He was, oh crap, I don't think I have it on my computer. Well, I'll have it in the show notes for you. Or I can just pull it up on my phone and do it really crude style here. So he went to go see Thin Lizzy with Brian Downey, and gotta find it, of course. He was at the show, and who does he run into? But a one Simon Robinson. Simon McBride. Sorry, I'm reading too many show notes. He runs into Simon McBride at the show. Look at that.
Nice.
So yeah, he just kind of bumped into him, and he said, I want to get his exact words because it's I don't want to. he says, where is it? Where did it go? Oh, it might be in my deep purple. No, it's actually my personal one. Here we go. Seaman Somerville. It says, oh, would be he said Purple are making a new album and plan to go back on tour this year. Says a very down-to-earth guy and a real moment for me as I hadn't met a Purple member before. So pretty awesome.
So he's just there in the audience?
Yeah, he was just there in the audience. He seemed to be very
Nice.
pleased to be hanging out with he was all smiles. I'm sure he's a big, he's a big Gary Moore fan. I'm sure he's a big Thin Lizzy fan.
Mhm.
So having a good time. So that's great. And I'm sure, he doesn't get recognized out in public super often. So although at a Thin Lizzy show, he might have a little more chance. That's awesome. So thank you, Stephen, for sending that along. That's really, really cool. And yeah, looking forward to that tour and even more so the album. That'll be excellent. All right. So without further ado, you know what time it is.
Bill John's busting out the spreadsheet, and he's fumbling with the tips. Oops, he sorted it the wrong way. Now he can't tell what is beer.
All right, John, where does Bodast, the Bodast tapes, fall in our album rankings?
Okay, so it ranks right about where I thought it would. It's toward the bottom of the spreadsheet with a 6.5. We rated it equally. You and I,
look at that. Even though not on
3.25
tracks, but for the
equal.
whole album, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's nestled between Elf, Carolina County, Bolin, Zephyr, going back to Colorado. So honestly, kind of where I thought it would wind up, kind of down with the other mid to late 60s, really early 70s albums, because that doesn't seem to be where both of our strongest tastes lie. But I would say, regardless of the position on the spreadsheet, I would say that it was a pretty strong demo. Like you're bringing to me like a demo of some guys mid 60s. Like what was the year? 66? Was it 66?
I think they recorded it between 68 and because they were forming deep. So Woodman would have been out of Deep Purple in early 68. So this was recorded in later 68, early 69, probably.
All right. So yeah, late 60s. Psychedelic rock or 60s rock, and I'd just be like, all right. And it actually wasn't bad, and it didn't throw me for a loop with the length of the songs. Like I do appreciate that they kept them pretty short, about 3 minutes, because there have been some 60s albums where you're just like, oh yeah, it's a 60s kind of pop trio type of thing or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, all their songs will be like 2.5 minutes long. And there were some of them that we've done in the past were like 8 minutes. And I'm like, ah, shit. So I was grateful that wasn't this. And I think another thing that I wasn't expecting was how good, and I mean, I say this early on because I don't know how developed he was, like how many years later it was before he got like really good, or started recording many albums of the Steve Howe.
Yeah.
Pretty good guitar player. He's another one that I'll take another look at in the future, I think. Just because I think that if the work on a early demo compilation was this strong, I'd like to see what else he's done.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think he's I know his stuff tends to go more into the prog territory, but
Right.
yeah. One other thing that I need to bring up too, because I think this happened since I have it out here, which would indicate that I didn't talk about this on the show yet, even though I've sent text messages, but I did get a package from the wonderful Norman Weichelbaum, and which I sent a picture to you. So, and I opened it up, and it's a CD of, it says A Soulful Christmas, and it says Merry Christmas, Nate. Remember that?
Yeah.
With my face photoshopped
face on it. I love
onto
it.
Glenn Hughes's body. I'll have to put this in the show notes too. And then, but I don't know what's better, that or the fact that when when I took that little photo out that was photoshopped, what it is it's a copy of the CD that's actually autographed by Glenn Hughes. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, this is a very limited production album, and now I've got an autographed Glenn Hughes copy of the Soulful Christmas with Glenn Hughes and his cat on the inside. Just looking at his cat.
All right,
Um,
that I've never seen before, so that's actually that's the cherry on top right there.
yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I gotta scan this. Or actually, maybe I could just ask him to send me a digital copy of that image because of me, because I don't know what I'll do with it, but besides treasure it always. So thank you, Norman. I know I already thanked you probably 2 months ago, but thank you again on the show for your generous contribution. Okay, so yeah, with that, just a little bit of a wrap up. Bodast, between 1968 and 1989, they did this self-titled debut album for Tetragrammaton, which they were on, which we all know, of course, folded. Uh, and Deep Purple was on that label as well. Then they would go on Purple Records, but did not. I'm sorry, Curtis Muldoon would go on Purple Records, and Howe went on to go to Yes. Their last gig was opening for the Who and Chuck Berry at Royal Albert Hall on July 5th, 1969. So just a couple months before Deep Purple would be there with a concerto. They also were the backing band for Chuck Berry at the Royal Albert Hall, minus Steve Howe. Howe said he only found out during the rehearsals that afternoon when Chuck Berry pointed at him and said, "We don't need you." And he just went out to do the guitar. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, he's friggin' Chuck Berry. He's like, I don't need anybody overshadowing me.
yeah, he didn't pull any punches. But how in Howe's book, he doesn't say it like in a negative way. He said he brought his guitar in to show Chuck Berry, and they chatted before the show. So it sounds like it was it wasn't like a super asshole move, but it
That's
sounds like
still
it was a
funny
little
though.
bit to the
We
point.
don't need you.
Hey,
It's
you,
just
we don't.
funny to
It's like
think of.
it's like the poor guitarist in Elf when Ritchie just took over the band. Hey, you, beat it. I'll take
Which
everybody else. You get lost.
yeah, which
Hit the bricks.
probably more historically accurate. Kind of like
Yes, that
Richie.
one was probably not done. They probably weren't swapping guitar stories after that one. In 1969, Bobby Clark was asked to fill in the Jeff Beck group. So now he's playing with Jeff Beck. So he's played with Ritchie Blackmore, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. Unbelievable. Beck asked him to stay in the band, but he said he wanted to get back to work with Bodast, so not maybe the wisest career move. Tetragrammaton folded, and then in 1981, as he said, he dug this up after Clive Skinner died and used this. Howe says that they were fired from the label after an engineer at Kingsway Studio accused them of taking heroin, which he said they did not do. He said they were drinkers. They messed around a little weed, but never heroin. But that runs counter to what the story is, which is that they just went away because the label folded.
Wow.
Clark went on to, again, for a fourth time, work with Vince Taylor and the Playboys and many other acts over the years. Curtis and Skinner, going by Clive Muldoon at this point, formed the duo Curtis Muldoon and released an album on Purple Records featuring Steve Howe on lead guitar, Tony Ashton as well. Curtis Muldoon had a song called Saffron, which was used liberally for the Madonna hit song Ray of Light. So if you look on the song Ray of Light, these two guys from Bodast have writing credits on the Madonna song, and probably made far more from that than they ever did with Bodast or Curtis Muldoon, because that was a huge hit.
I'm sure.
So yeah, if you listen to that song by Curtis Muldoon, and then listen to, if you probably know Ray of Light anyway, but if you listen to it, you can see that they clearly changed it up a little bit, but they took huge pieces from that song. Steve Howe went on to audition for the Nice. He got the job, but the following day decided the band wasn't for him and left. He also got an audition with Jethro Tull, but didn't take it because he said he was told that the guitar player wouldn't have any songwriting input. And he had a brief stint with Atomic Rooster with Carl Palmer, but didn't think it was a good fit. Of course, he'd later work with him in Asia. Howe was in P.P. Arnold's backing band, and P.P. Arnold was someone who had some hits in the 60s, also sang backups on Jesus Christ Superstar, and he was in that band with Tony Ashton and Roy Dyke from Ashton, Gardner and Dyke. And then Howe goes on to replace Peter Banks in Yes. Howe was in the band The Syndicats and was replaced by Ray Fennick, and then when Ray Fennick left, Peter Banks was asked to replace Ray Fennick, and then he went on to found Yes, and then Howe replaced him in Yes. So those three were just kind of playing musical chairs. And then Howe went on to be in the supergroups Asia and GTR. Clive Skinner passed away in 1978 from complications of a prescription medicine. Bobby Woodman passed away in 2014, and then these songs were released in 4 different formats. Originally, the Bodast tapes in 1981. Steve Howe with Bodast, the early years in 1990, Spectral Nether Street in 2000, and then what he calls the best compilation, which is this one, Towards Utopia in 2017. And that's it. That is all the news that's fit to print. I have a million links in here for more information if you want to dig into Bodast, but that's it. That's the cockles and the mussels, the lemons and oranges, or whatever of Bodast.
Yeah. Grapes and bananas.
That was their follow-up hit. They did a demo of that one.
Yeah.
Grapes and bananas.
Or bananas and almond butter.
I don't think they had almond butter in the 60s or the
I don't
50s.
know.
These songs are from the 50s.
Yeah, but now I'm just
Did they even invent almonds yet? They might have not even had almonds.
invented almonds. I don't know. I'm just putting together like popular healthy snacks.
Yeah. Cockles and mussels, a nice healthy snack.
Ugh.
I like cockles and mussels.
No, they're cockles.
They're like little. They're like kind of like snails. They're like beach.
Ugh.
No. Wait, no. Wait, they're not like they're like little bivalves, I think.
Still,
let me look at them up. I know I've had them before. They're like little, like they look almost like a cross between like a clam and a scallop. Yeah, there they are. An edible burrowing bivalve. There used to be a bunch of them in the beach by me in New York, and you stick your toe in and they just kind of pop out.
Yeah.
If it's from the sea, it's not for he.
Yeah. Nar.
Ooh. When I was just talking about those Google those Google questions, those dumb questions. People also ask, are cockles the same as scallops? I'm guessing no, since they have 2 different names. Do cockles taste like clams?
I mean, I would be likely to be asking those questions because I didn't know what they were.
Yeah. Cockle, warms the cockles of my heart. That's a good one. That's a good
It's interesting.
What movie is it? It's a Woody Allen movie where he's like someone says it warms the cockles of my heart, and Woody Allen's like, oh, just what we need, warm cockles.
I remember that.
I can't remember which movie it was, but or
It's just like
cockles.
I'm walking around with
Just
warm
what we need, hot
cockles.
cockles.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I gotta. Yeah, that's definitely gonna look that one up.
Yeah, it's probably like Love and Death or something. Hot cockles. I'm looking. Oh, it is from Love and Death.
Is it Love and Death? Yep, Woody Allen. You're right.
Warm the cockle of my heart. That's just great. Nothing like hot cockles. That's what he says. Oh man.
It's just great. Nothing like hot cockles. Oh my god.
That's a good one. All right, folks. Well, that's it. That's Bodast. Thanks for listening to the most bodastical episode we've ever done. We'll be back at you next week.
Yeah,
So
dude.
With our 250th episode next week.
Oh, we should do something really special for that.
We should. Maybe we will. We'll see.
Or
not. It might be something slightly more well-known than Bodast.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, talk to you next week, my friend.
Oh, geez.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.